Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this press conference and the launch of Vermont Promise. We won't be any longer than we need to. We know weather's coming in. Special thanks to the legislature IT for setting this up for us. Vermont is a very special place. We have beautiful landscapes, strong economy, strong communities, hardworking people, and a traditional neighbors. Working correctly in Vermont, and many Vermonters are struggling. Government spending have made it much more difficult for Vermont families, workers, farmers, retirees, especially in our rural communities. Too many of our young people are leaving because they don't see a future here. They want good jobs, affordable homes, and the opportunity to raise a family. Instead, Vermont has become nearly the oldest state in the nation. As our workforce shrinks, the burden on those who remain continues to grow. We see the consequences every day. Schools are struggling with declining enrollment, and communities are facing difficult consolidation decisions. Rural hospitals are losing critical services, including maternity care in 2 of our rural hospitals. Housing costs continue to rise. Availability is a serious issue. And families are paying more for health care, energy, and property taxes. In many cases, more than they can afford. These consequences are real, they are interconnected, and they are predictable. These challenges happen overnight, and they won't be solved overnight. They can be solved with Vermonters sent in 2024 for 3 decades of one-party control in Montpelier. That change made a big difference. Together, tax increases to 4% over a 2-year period. 2 years, 4%. They for the military retirees and block the implementation of the Clean Heat Standard. Those are the kinds of results that are possible. It starts listening to the people instead of mandating what is best for them. Now we have an opportunity in 2026. 2026, Vermonters can elect a Republican majority in both the Senate and the House. We can clearly see what Vermont looks like after 6 years of setting the agenda, priorities, and controlling what bills end up on the and what is those bills. Imagine a legislature laser focused on affordability, a legislature that prioritizes housing, healthcare, agriculture, public and increased taxes. Vermont Republicans know that Vermont cannot tax and regulate its way to prosperity. If you make us the majority party in November, we will go in a very different direction. Vermont Republicans have a different strategy, one where a stronger Vermont starts with a stronger economy, one that creates opportunity for everyone. Rework, encourage. That's exactly what it became. $50 million tax relief package in 2027, middle income voters and Social Security retirees and military retirees. Where would we get that money? That's a great question, and I'm sure I'm going to get asked it 1,000,000 times in the next month. There are a lot of places we can go. Vermont has 900 unfilled positions right now that are budgeted for. That's over $100 million. We're making a $30 million ADEC plus payment right now. And there's a growing gap between the Act 73 Foundation and current spending, about $160 million. Boards and positions can be streamlined or eliminated. If government had grown at inflation the last 8 years, since 2019, we'd be spending $2 billion less than we are right now. $2 billion. Finding $250 million of income in the first year is just a start. And we will reduce property taxes by $134 million by moving the education property tax credit into the general fund, while continuing to protect those that are for income sensitivity, but at nearly half the cost. And this will save the general fund $34 million as well. Vermont's current property tax credit system is so poorly designed that 40% of the people that receive the property tax credit would be better off if there was no property tax credit system at all. Let that sink in. If we didn't have the property tax credit, almost half of the people that would receive the property tax credit would actually be better off. And that doesn't cost any money in spending. That's just fiscal prudence. We will make healthcare more affordable by giving insurers greater flexibility to offer more affordable coverage options and increasing the number of insurers. We basically have 4 plans right now and about 1.5 insurers. New Hampshire has 12 insurers and about 42 plans, and their rates are a heck of a lot less than ours are. That will make the healthcare system more stable, more predictable, and more able to benefit patients, providers, employers, and families alike. We will tackle our housing shortage by cutting the unnecessary red tape and rules that impede progress and protect no one, while building on 802 homes and the Community and Housing Infrastructure Program. And those 2 programs cost government nothing. And we'll continue to use VHIP and MHIP as long as this housing crisis is in front of us. And when the housing crisis ends, we will propose to remove the funding that supports those systems. We will fully fund our transportation fund and invest in the roads and bridges that connect our communities and support our economy. Vermont has 2,700 miles of state highway. This is 56. You felt that on the way in here today. Okay. We need to get back to paving 300 miles a year so that all of our roads remain good and very good. That is incredibly important to our rural communities that disproportionately have to travel and businesses in the state of Vermont. Transportation infrastructure really matters. We'll pursue practical environmental policies by encouraging efficiency improvements, adoption of proven affordable technology, and increased electrification. We will not support expensive mandates that raise energy costs for families and businesses and make it more difficult for them to commute to work and heat their homes. And we'll make our communities safer by increasing accountability for repeat and violent offenders while protecting the rights of law-abiding Vermonters. We will introduce a constitutional amendment to keep repeat and violent offenders out of our communities while they await trial. We will lead with integrity, transparency, and we will listen before it's late. Understand exactly what the consequences are before passing this. No more Act 1s. We'll judge every decision by one question. Does it make life better and more, especially rural Vermonters? This election isn't about Republicans versus Democrats. It's about whether Vermont can once again become a place where people where families can afford to buy a home. Still ahead, but it is going to take a Republican majority with stronger communities and more opportunity, more affordable future for every Vermonter. That is our Vermont promise. Thank you for listening. I'll take questions. It's not part of Vermont Promise. I'm not sure. Are you with the press or? No. For the press. But I'd like to talk to you afterwards, but this is press. Thank you.
Senators, go for it.
Okay. You mentioned that the Democrats have had control of 30 years. You made some in the last election. How confident are you that more Republicans will be elected and you can perhaps have a majority in the upcoming election?
I'm confident. I think the issues are on our side. I think we're behind what Vermonters want. I think right there on that board, and what was in my speech, says it all. I think for what we want, and we'll take that to the voters in November, and we'll see where they come down. But we're confident that people are inclined to vote for Vermonters. We think they showed that clearly in 2024. We think we've proven that those votes were, were good votes that they took. And we're prepared to make the case that if even more Vermonters vote for Republican candidates, that will make a bigger difference in Vermont.
What majority look like in the Senate? I mean, specifically, which seats are you looking to either keep or flip to get to a majority?
Well, we're obviously looking to keep all of them, and we're targeting every seat. We know that. I don't think we're going to run the table and have 30 Republican senators here. Three does the trick, right, to get us to 16. 15 if we have the lieutenant governor, but we're targeting everything that we want to run everywhere in the state. We think we have a message that resonates with everywhere in the state: rural, urban, Chittenden, Windham, Addison, Washington, you name it. We think we have a message that resonates with all corners of Vermont, and so we're going to challenge in all corners of Vermont.
I'm wondering if you've seen the new UNH poll out this morning. It basically said that 4 in 10 Vermonters polled believe that capitalism is working. Make of that.
Well, I'll just say capitalism is not a perfect system, nor is socialism. So, what that really says to me, is I think that really flows out of the people they're working, they're playing by the rules in a capitalistic economy, struggling to make ends meet. And so I think people start to question the system. And so I get I think I understand that, the 4 in 10, that reservation. I don't think anybody in this crowd would say, maybe I'm full on 100% socialism. I also don't think that anybody in this crowd would say full on 100% capitalism, dog eat dog, no regulation. I don't think anybody would make that case. We're going to land somewhere in the middle, and it's going to have has essential things that they need to do, but businesses also need to operate, and I think that's where we'll land, is somewhere we are now. We'll land somewhere in the middle.
We obviously don't know what the result of the election will be. Right. If the Democrats retain control, how many of the Vermont Promise, proposals here will become formal proposals in the House and Senate, and how much bipartisan support do you think you can get for them?
Well, I can tell you that all of them will be put forth as bills in the Senate. I would suspect in the House too, although the constitutional amendments do have to start in the Senate, so there is that one difference. I hope we show up with 16 Republican senators and 76 Republican representatives, and even if we do come back with a majority, there's still going to be a lot of Democrats who have to work with them, find the middle ground. But we think that middle ground is going to fall where 80%, 90% of Vermonters are, which is, we think they want this stuff, and we're going to push hard on that. It's important. We need to have economic growth and opportunity in this state and affordability, and we just don't have it right now. And we've kind of been doing the same thing for 30 years, which is more taxes, bigger government, and more regulations. It hasn't worked.
Have you reached out to your Democratic colleagues regarding Vermont Promise? change
No.
their support?
No. Lola?
The last 2 years were all about education. You guys passed a law that doesn't really become reality unless you do more work.
Yeah.
I perhaps I missed it in your speech. Didn't notice it as a point of emphasis, not this
Yeah.
placard, and I'm wondering, is part of the Vermont Promise, we are going to take the next step on education reform. We're going to move forward with a foundation formula.
Yeah. Good, Lola. Yeah, and here's why. Why we did. Districts are going to start here they're starting now. They're having some really hard because of what happened in Act 170 and Act 73, which was last year. We're waiting on a lot of data to come back that will inform us as to what that foundation formula or what our formula will really look like. And to me, they're going to have a lot of hard work, and those communities are going to have a lot of difficult conversations. And to me, it just doesn't feel right at this moment in time to politicize that to an election, and not knowing what those studies are going to look like and to come back in December, and not knowing what these districts are going to decide to do. And it didn't feel right to politicize that topic right now. Now, with that being said, we are invested in what's coming back and how that conversation evolves, and we will be a voice for Vermonters and for Vermont kids and Vermont schools when we come back and the districts are starting to make decisions. But there's just a lot unknown there right now.
So we're kind of going off of that. I know on town meeting day, a majority of school budgets did end up passing. And so I'm wondering, based on that information, where we at the end of the session, voters in terms of why changes need. Do you think that there's still, consensus among voters that change in the legislature?
I mean, I think a lot of voters would have really high property tax bills, and they're also starting to. They're interested in that. Well, so they're engaged. They're engaged. We're listening to them. Ultimately, we need to be right for the kids and those schools in a way that works for kids and school employees, and we also need to keep our eye on taxpayers. And that's why the conversation over the foundation, which is going to happen in January, February, March, when this data comes back, is so important. But not knowing what that data says, it's not something that at this moment I'm willing or ready to turn into something that we're going to campaign on. But it is something we are very cognizant of. Yeah. Right, the ADEC Plus payment. So a little bit in the weeds, but I really appreciate the question because it is an enormous part of our. We pay about 400. I think it's about $450 million total right now to the Vermont State Teacher Retirement System and the Vermont State Employees Retirement System and OPEB healthcare, and that is to make up for best. We are paying $450 million a year, and we don't get anything for it. I mean, we could not make payment, and teachers and state employees would still get their benefit. What the ADEC Plus is in the agreement in 2022, we said we're going to put exactly what the pension people say we need to put into the pension system to solve this problem by 2038. And then they also wrote into laws that not only were we going to make that payment, we were going to put in an extra $30 million every year until those pensions funded liability rate. And $30 million is a lot of economy that's kind of stumbling along right now. And we think we could probably use that money in better places.
I'm young, but I'm old enough to remember when we realized how bad our pension fund. I mean, are we with this proposal risk recreating that crisis?
We make the ADEC payment every year. What the, you know, the really smart people with the computers that tell us exactly what we're going to need in the bank to fund all the check. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a decision was made that we're just going to pay an extra $30 million on top of all that. And that's what we're talking about is the ADEC plus.
But wasn't that to deal with the unfunded debt, right? Like future crisis?
No, it was just an aggressive strategy. It was just a more aggressive strategy, more aggressive than what the really smart people said was necessary to pay into the fund to get it back to where it should be. Yeah, I mean, there's $450 million. We're talking about the $30 million ADEC plus piece. The $420 million part of this conversation.
Can you talk about? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what overlap, if any, there is between the Vermont Promise and what we're seeing playing out with the rural Vermont Rising folks? I mean, are you also engaging with some of their local chapters as well?
I have two, one in my district that meets up in East Hardwick, and another one that meets just outside my district up in Burke. And I've been to some of their meetings, but this is not a coordinated effort with Vermont Rising or those local. It's not a coordinated campaign in any way, shape, or form.
I just had a question
Yeah.
about the transportation piece.
Yeah.
The goal of doing all this additional paving, it sounds great. I know that a lot of the issue with this, like, it's a revenue question, and a lot of the proposals in the legislature have been trying to find new revenues, have been like a tax on retail deliveries and you know, both you and or would say we don't want additional taxes, we don't want additional fees.
Right.
How do we get that? Where does that money come from for paving if it's not a new revenue?
Well, I think, you know, the one thing we do need to get 100% of the purchasing use over to the transportation fund. And work was done this year on a mileage tax for EVs and potentially in the future for cars that's gasoline, but they're still using the roads. And so we support it. But to be more direct to your question, you know, I don't know whether public safety is a priority for me. They're both in my top two. And when we're creating new programs and new positions and new boards and all this stuff, and our transportation fund is not getting funded and is, you know, 50 miles a year at a 2,700, means that we've got our priorities really wrong. I think we need to have, I mean, I think that there are monies that are being spent in other places that we should absolutely be finding a way to get them to the transportation fund. What would those be? You know, I know that the administration is going to go. They've started their budgeting process and with them. I mean, but there are lots of little things. You know, the Cannabis Control Board is 3 or 4. Could it be done more efficiently by putting it in DLL? We're not doing single payer healthcare in this or universal healthcare in the state of Vermont. Do we need to be spending $8 million on the Green Mountain Care Board? So these are decisions that have been made, and they've been made in a lot of cases, you know, in a macro spreadsheet way at the expense of transportation. And I think we need to reprioritize transportation. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
Proposal, and I guess would that be like part of the or is that
No, that would be outside of the 250 million. This is a parity of the, you know, what happens in the education fund. This is getting, but I'm happy to talk about it. The homestead property tax rate, Vermont has to elevate it 35 cents. to pay for the 130 property tax credit. That's $1,400 on a $400,000, right? And that increase is so significant that for a lot of Vermonters that get a property tax credit, they would actually be better off getting a 35-cent reduction in their rate. That's why I say for a lot of Vermonters that get the property tax credit, they would be better off if there was no property tax credit system at all. Okay, so if you eliminate that property tax credit system and all those rates come down, there are still going to be Vermonters that are going to be damaged. If their property tax credit was greater than what their rate reduction will be. And all we're saying is that instead of piling it up on the property tax rate, move it over to the general fund, and the projection, the cost that it would, instead of being $134 million of property taxpayer money, it would be about $75 to $80 million of general fund money to make those people whole so they're not damaged. We already spent $105 million this year to help those people out and everybody else. Why wouldn't we just spend $75 million to take care of that group instead of $105 million, and everybody over on the property tax side have their rates come down by 35 cents? I mean, people have tried, and believe me, people have tried to fix the property tax credit in the education fund since I've been in this building. That's the problem. It needs to go over to the general fund. That's weedy, sorry. Lola knows the education fund. I know she does.
I am curious if we can hear from some of the other senators, because they're out there stumping right now. And I'm curious how having the Vermont Promise delineated like this now will help them in their campaigns.
Well, I'll speak to that generally, and then I'll say after I'm done here and we turn off the podium, you all are certainly welcome to talk to any of the senators. But I think it's just, we had my 12 colleagues, my other 12 Republican senators, we had a series of strategic planning sessions back in April and May while the legislature was still going. We stayed late, got pizzas, but the basic question is, I think, really, if we're going to sit here, stand here and tell Vermonters that they should make us a majority, we need to clearly tell them what we'll do. We can't just say, pick a villain and play off of villain politics and throw in a single word out there and ambiguously, say we're for affordability. I mean, we're like, if we're going to ask Vermonters to make us a majority, we need to tell them exactly what we would do in a very clear way. Okay. Now, to get a little bit more into your question, we've decided what that is, what we will do, and now it's time to communicate it. Doesn't do any good if it just stays up in the room where the pizzas are. We never tell anybody about it. So that's what this is. This is, us telling the state of Vermont, we're ready to be a majority. We think that would be a good thing for Vermonters, and this is what we will do if you put us into a majority. I think, and they could probably answer the question better. As a candidate, is it helpful to have something that you can point to and say, yeah, like I'm for that? As a conversation starter, if nothing else. And of course, just like the Democrats, we have, candidates that are hopefuls, right? And they haven't spent years in this building, just like a lot of the Democrats candidates have not spent years in this building. And so I think it's helpful to them to, to start to understand the policy and to be able to point to something. But after I'm done and I turn off the switch, you can talk to any of them and ask them. Anything else? Okay, thank you so much. I will, immediately afterwards, I will be in room 11. If any of people from the press would like to have an on the record, and then after that, if anybody is left hanging around, I'm glad to talk as well. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate you all holding off the rain too. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that for me. And I do have a pager here with some detail on it, if anybody would like. No, actually, it's 70. Yes, you don't get